Alright, this video we're going to go over reciprocal trig functions. Alright, so reciprocal trig functions. We have our normal functions, which you should know. We have sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, those are the three we went over in the last video, plus you should have already heard of those. Alright, well the reciprocal of sine is cosecant. Alright, it's abbreviated CSC. The reciprocal of cosine is secant, abbreviated SEC. And the reciprocal of tangent is cotangent, abbreviated COT. Now, a way to remember these, because I know you remember sine, cosine, and tangent, but a way to remember whether cosecant goes with sine or secant goes with cosine. Tangent's easy because they both have the word tangent in them. But the way I remember these four here is, as long as you remember sine and cosine are the normal trig functions, all right, if you remember one starts with an S, and one starts with a C. Same thing here. One starts with an S, one starts with a C. Then you remember that sine and cosecant go together because you're going to have one with an S and one with a C. And cosine and secant go together because, again, you're going to have one with an S and one with a C. Now, they're the reciprocal trig functions, all right? Their relationship to their normal counterparts is the cosecant of alpha will equal 1 over the sine of alpha. Cosine is similar. It is secant of alpha equals 1 over the cosine of alpha. And then cotangent is the same way. Cotangent of alpha equals 1 over the tangent of alpha. Okay? So if you just have a coordinate point, all right, then the cosecant of alpha equals 1 over y. All right, because remember, sine is your y value. So 1 divided by y is your cosecant. But just remember that y can't be 0. All right, which means you can't do the cosecant of 0 degrees or 180 degrees, or pi, 0, and pi radians. Okay. Now the secant is, of course, 1 over x, and the same thing, x can't be 0, because then you'd be dividing by 0. So you can't do the secant of 90 degrees or 270 degrees, because again, you'd be dividing by 0, and you can't do that. Okay? And your tangent, you're simply going to flip it upside down. Okay? Because your tangent is sine over cosine. So a quick example, say your tangent of alpha equals 2/3. Your cotangent of alpha is going to equal 1 over 2/3, which of course is 3/2. All right, you simply take it and you flip it upside down. All right, you flip tangent upside down. Okay, so remember your secant goes with sine. Your cosecant, I'm sorry, cosecant, I pointed at the right thing and said the wrong thing. Your cosecant goes with sine, and it's simply 1 over sine. You flip it upside down. Your secant goes with cosine. It's 1 over cosine, so you flip the cosine upside down. But remember, it can't be 0. Then your tangent, your cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, and you simply flip it upside down, if I can talk. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how to get these reciprocals on your calculator. All right, well, if you look at your calculators, you may see a button that says x to the negative 1. If you don't see that one, you'll probably see one that says 1 over x. Okay, those are your reciprocal keys. Okay, those are your reciprocal keys. Not the keys that look like the sine of -1, the cosine of -1, and the tangent of -1. These are what's called inverse trig, which is not the same thing as reciprocal trig. Two totally different things, and we are going to do this later. All right, we're going to get into inverse trig, but we're going to do it later. We're not going to do it right now. All right, so just keep in mind when you see these sine to the -1, cosine to the -1, and tangent to the -1 keys, that is your inverse trig, not your reciprocal trig. Your reciprocal keys are your x to the -1 or 1 divided by x. All right, so let's do an example, and then I'm going to have you do one, and then we're going to wrap this up. So let's give the sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent for alpha equals pi over 3. All right, so the first thing you want to make sure is that you're in radian mode. If you're not, put your calculator in it, or your answer is going to come out wrong. And then you're going to use the trig buttons. All right, so for the sine of alpha, you simply make sure you're in the radian mode and type in the sine of pi over 3, and then hit the enter key, and it should spit back out. And also, if you're using my TI multi-views, 30xs multi-views, if you make sure you're in math print mode, or if you have a calculator that has a math print mode, it'll give you out a nice, neat fraction. Okay, that fraction is equivalent to 0.866. I like the fractions better, they make more sense. All right, the cosine of alpha. Okay, so simply do the cosine of pi divided by 3. That's going to come out to 1/2, which is of course 0.5. I'm not going to write that. And then the tangent of alpha is of course sine divided by cosine. All right, you can remember when you divide by a fraction, you can take the reciprocal of it and multiply it by the top. So this simply equals the square root of 3. Okay, so the tangent of pi divided by 3 is simply the square root of 3. Okay, now let's look at the reciprocal trigs. The cosecant, oops, when I go off the bottom of the board, that's what happens. All right, so you have the cosecant of alpha, which is going to be this flipped upside down. So it's 1 over the square root of 3 over 2. Pull that out, so it's 2 over the square root of 3. Don't forget you have to rationalize your denominator by multiplying by the radical in the denominator. So this gives us 2 square root of 3 over 3, which in decimal approximation is approximately 1.155. And then your secant of alpha is going to be 1 over 1/2. Flip that out, 2 over 1, so that is 2. Let me get this out of my way. And then your cotangent is simply going to be 1 over the square root of 3. You have to rationalize your denominator. So this gives you the square root of 3 over 3, which is approximately 0.577. Okay, approximately 0.577. All right, so that's your reciprocal. You can either do them in fraction form, which is my preferred way, and it's the preferred way I'd rather you do them too, or you can do them in decimal form. Either way, it means the same thing. It's just that the fractions, once I show you the way to remember the unit circle, the fractions will be second nature to you, and you'll be like, calculator, why would I use a calculator for this? Okay? All right, let's do a you try. I'm gonna have you try a few of these. All right, I want you to find the sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent of, oh, sorry, 4 alpha equals negative pi over 4. So go ahead and pause the video and figure this out. All right, that should have been enough time for you. I set mine up in the meantime. So the sine of negative pi over 4, type that in your calculator, make sure you're in radian mode, make sure you use the trig buttons, and make sure you, if you have a calculator with math print, you're in math print mode. The sine of negative pi over 4 should have given you negative square root of 2 over 2, which is approximately negative 0.707. The cosine of negative pi over 4 would have been positive square root of 2 over 2. So that's approximately positive 0.707. And of course, the tangent is simply going to be the sine divided by the cosine. When you have the same thing on the top and bottom, of course, it is 1. We have 1 negative, 1 positive, so it's going to be, the tangent is going to be a negative 1. All right. Let's go to the reciprocal side. This is going to be, of course, your 1 over your sine value. So it's going to be 1 over negative square root of 2 over 2. You can flip this out. It's going to be negative 2 over square root of 2. Rationalize your denominator. Square root of 2, square root of 2. So that's going to be 2 square root of 2 over 2. 2's cancel out, and it's negative, leaving you negative square root of 2, which is approximately negative 1.414. All right. For the secant, it is going to be 1 over the square root of 2 over 2. So it's going to be the same thing except positive, square root of 4, or positive 1.414. And now the cotangent, of course, is going to be 1 over negative 1, which is still negative 1. All right. So that's how you do reciprocal trig. It's not that bad. Pretty simple. You just find your normal value, put it under 1, and solve it out. All right, making sure to rationalize denominators. All right. Now there's one more thing I want to mention before we call this video finished. That's even and odd trig. Might sound complicated, but trust me, it's not. So, even functions are functions where f of negative x equals f of x. So basically, you flip the sign on your x value, and you get the same thing out. All right. So let's put that. So if I plug in a negative x, I would get the same answer as a positive x. So if I plug in a negative x, I get the same answer as positive x. Okay, that's an even function. An easy way to remember this, okay, is remember even, equal, meaning you plug in the negative, you're going to get an equal answer. It's going to be the same exact answer. And then remember odd, opposite. I don't know why I said that so weird. Even, equal, odd, opposite, meaning you plug in f of negative x, you get negative f of x. So you get the opposite value back out. Let's look at an example. Let's take the cosine of 2. That equals negative 0.416. Let's take the cosine of negative 2, and we get negative 0.416. So we got the same thing out. We switched the value from 2 to negative 2, and we got the same answer out. So that means that cosine is even. Cosine is an even function. Okay, cosine is even. Let's try sine. Let's put in the sine of 2. That equals 0.909. Put in the sine of negative 2. What do we get? Negative 0.909. So that means, since we got the opposite answer out, that means sine is odd. Sine is an odd function. Okay, cosine is even, sine is odd. All right. Now, this also holds true for their reciprocals. Okay, so secant is also even, and cosecant is also odd. All right, so cosine is even, so is secant. Sine is odd, so is cosecant. All right, so that has been your reciprocal trig video. They work pretty much the same as normal trig, except it's the reciprocal of your normal trig. Okay, make sure you rationalize denominators. All right, and of course, we'll be going over some problems over this material tomorrow in class. See you tomorrow.